I now have the privilege of introducing a very esteemed colleague, our friend Jim Stengel, who has done some things with IEG. And I'm not going to read you all of his bio out of the pamphlet. You guys can do that on your own. But Jim spent over 25 years at Procter & Gamble, and when he left as the global marketing officer for Procter & Gamble. And you can only imagine, and I can only imagine the experiences that he went through. He is now the CEO of his own company, a think tank of sorts, has written his own book, and I know that some of the ideals and some of the practices he's going to share with you are truly, truly enlightening. So I don't want to take any more time. I'm just going to turn it over to Jim.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? It's not reverberating. I'm told I have to stay between the speakers. Listen, before I get into the meat of what we're going to talk about this morning, a few off-script comments. First of all, it's our first trip to New Zealand. My wife is with me for this trip, and I just want to thank Warren and Penny and Hamish and everyone for this opportunity to be with you and also to be in your remarkable country. It's been on our bucket list. Last year we did Patagonia. New Zealand has always been, and we want to come back with our children. We're sending them pictures and comments, and our daughter's giving us a hard time for not being here. So, and to see, we've read about Christchurch, right? And it's one thing to read about it and see the YouTube videos and see it on CNN, but to walk around, and we spent the last 2 days really exploring on foot and talking to shop owners and people in restaurants. And I just must say the resilience of the people and what we see in the city has been remarkable and inspirational. And relevant to what we're talking about today is sport has a huge role in that. I was talking about that with Warren at dinner last night. Sport brings people together. Shared ideals, shared vision, common spirit. So it's just great to see the Crusaders and Canterbury's role in this. It's great to feel it, to experience it. Resilience is at the end of the day what happiness is about, because life is full of ups and downs. Resilient people are happy people. And it was just remarkable to see that and experience that personally. So thank you for the opportunity, not just to be here with you, but be in your great city. And we have a few days that we're still spending in the country, going out into Queenstown tonight and enjoying your nature. So thank you for the opportunity. The other one I want to thank, where's Qantas? I know they're there you are. Thank you for getting us here in a beautiful way. I mean, really, it was not a hardship coming. And we're looking forward to the trip home. So you do a great job. Your people, your planes, your technology, everything, just terrific. So thank you. So, so anyway, the last comment before I jump into the meat of what we're talking about is the title of the presentation today, Third Brand. The reason I'm choosing that is I want you to think in your head that when you have any partnership, we're going to talk about a lot of different things in the next 50 minutes or so, but any partnership, you should think about creating something special, which I call a third brand. Right? All of you run businesses or organizations here, and whatever it is, business to business or business to consumer, you are creating a brand. Because a brand is nothing more than the thoughts and feelings someone has about you. So when you put together the Crusaders and CAT, or the Crusaders and a local business, think in your mind about creating something long-term with feelings and thoughts and brand equity. When you have that mentality, creativity flows. And I'll give you some examples of my own personal experience of trying to apply that mentality. It's different than thinking about a transaction or a sponsorship. It's a partnership. It's a third brand. That's why I've chosen this as a title. It's a way of thinking. No matter if you're spending a few dollars or millions of dollars, it's just a way of thinking. Got it? Okay. I have to start with this. We have some coaches in the back of the room who I've just met. How do I look? That's me at 15 years old, and I was a Crusader. Football, by the way, yeah, right. I'm getting this, yeah. I agree with you. I'm only 15, give me a break. But, you know, there would be no American football without rugby. They splintered a little bit in the 1920s, and football was a huge, American football, huge part of my childhood. I played for many years, and the team I played for was a Catholic school. I went to 12 years of Catholic school, and it was the Lancaster Catholic Crusaders. So I was very proud to wear that name. There's our logo. And Warren, we have a horse in our logo. So if you want any advice, we can work on that after. So anyway, so I played football for many years, the Crusaders, and we were just like, in a small way, we had a great winning tradition. And our coach used to say to us, if we ever lose, we will never be out-hit or out-physicaled by any team, no matter how big they were. And most of the teams we played were kilos bigger than us. So anyway, so I feel a little special bond being here with the Crusaders. Next picture, I took this a week ago. And my wife and I had the great opportunity to visit the Crusaders of the United States in American football, the Green Bay Packers. Right? As the Crusaders are to New Zealand, the Green Bay Packers are to America. It is the team with the winning tradition. There hasn't been a ticket for sale since 1967. The team is owned by the community. When they need money, they sell more shares, although you can't ever sell your share, and it's worth nothing. But when they want to raise $20 million, they sell more shares. So this is the chairman of the board of the Green Bay Packers. It's a volunteer job. The stadium seats about 70,000. They were playing the Philadelphia Eagles that day. The reason I'm showing it to you, and by the way, he runs a auto dealership in Wisconsin, which is the state where Green Bay is. It's about $1 billion auto dealership. Family business, started by himself and his brother, about 30 years ago. The reason I'm showing the slide is I asked him about who are the best partners with the Green Bay Packers in activation. So who brings to life the partnership the best? And his auto dealer does a really great job in a local way of being part of the community. But he said in terms of the international brands, Miller Lite. I said, well, what do they do? And he said, and here's just an idea. He said, well, there are Packer fans all over the United States, much like there are Crusader fans all over New Zealand. So Miller Lite has Packer bars all over the country. So if you're in Boston or Miami or New Orleans or San Francisco, there's a Miller Lite Packer bar, so you can go be among your colleagues, celebrate the game, and watch it together wherever you are. And Miller Lite has activated that themselves. So the Packers don't have the resources to do it. So a very, very smart idea to move it out of the city and expand the scope of the team. And Miller Lite does a great job on that. So just one little personal story before we get into the content. I'm an objectives kind of guy, right? I always believe in setting objectives and meeting them. So here's what we're going to do in the next hour or so. I hope when I put this slide up at the end of our time together that you have even more conviction that you need to build an ideals-driven third brand in your partnership. And I don't care how much money you have. It's not a matter of money. Second objective, I hope we're going to cover a lot of stuff today that you relearn or take home a principle that's helpful for you in your business or your life. Because actually the principles are one and the same. Third objective, I'm about commitments as well. You're having a lovely time in this 2 days. Tea, coffee, casino, meeting each other. It will have a high return on your investment, as Dan said, if you make one commitment over the next 2 days to do something differently when you leave here. So all you're getting in the next 2 days is inspiration. It's up to you to make a commitment, to drive your business forward, your organization, with your partners at Canterbury and the Crusaders. Just one commitment. And then last, I hope you enjoy yourselves. Right? Great business happens when we're having fun, not fun in a circus way, but fun in we're feeling passion and conviction and energy when we come to work. Got it? Anything else, Warren? Okay, those are objectives. And the roadmap to get us there is I'm going to share a little bit of background about myself so you know where I'm coming from. I think that's important. We're going to play a little game to demonstrate a principle. Then I'm going to share some stories about partnership and what I've learned over my career in building strong partnerships together. I'm going to talk a little bit about growth, what I've learned about growth, then we're going to wrap it up at the end. So that's sort of the roadmap over the next 50 minutes or so. And as you can tell, we're going to play a little stuff, it's going to be interactive. So I like to teach, I teach students, you can't sit up there and lecture. gotta have it. You have to have a conversation. So a bit about me, a little bit more. I was born and raised in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is on the eastern part of the U.S. And actually, it looks a bit like New Zealand, right? Except we don't have the mountains. But very, very rich farmland, strong tradition of farming and agriculture and dairy. There's a group called the Amish that emigrated there from Prussia in the 1700s. They're still there. They don't use electricity, but they're very, very, they're very connected to the land and a very, very strong community. And I grew up among them. I was not in a farming community, but my father did a lot of work with the farmers. And so that's where I was born and raised. I'm married, 2 children. They're in their 20s, like Warren's children. I was at Procter & Gamble for 25 years. Obviously, a significant part of my business philosophy was from my experience at P&G. And Procter & Gamble started 175 years ago in Cincinnati, Ohio, by 2 guys who married sisters. They came from Ireland and Scotland, and they started a small candle and soap business. And it's now 85 billion US dollars in sales, practically everywhere in the world. And so we began in Cincinnati, Ohio. We moved to Baltimore, which is a city on the coast, when P&G got into the cosmetics business. So I worked in cosmetics for a couple years. And then I was sent to Eastern Europe when the wall came down, and based in Prague to open up the business for P&G in Prague. Then we moved to Frankfurt to run the baby business across Eastern and Western Europe, and then we moved to Geneva, and then back to Cincinnati to be global marketing officer. That was kind of my career path at P&G. We moved 14 times in 30 years, something like that. So lots of mobility. I left P&G 5 years ago, almost to the day, because I had a passion to start my own business. And I wanted to bring the things I have learned in my life and business to life with others, with students and with other people. So I have a range of companies I consult with. I have a small team. Here are some of my clients. Some of them are academic institutions, some of them are nonprofits, some of them are companies, some of them are local companies, some of them are big companies. So I think there's something to learn from all of them. I have a nice life. I'm learning all the time, and I'm giving. I think that's a nice philosophy for all of us. If you feel like you're giving and learning every day, I think we develop. I teach at UCLA Anderson, a school in California, about 15 hours northeast of here via Qantas. It's in Los Angeles. Great school, great tradition, and I teach there once a year. I also am on the board of AOL, which is one of the world's largest brand turnarounds. It's the company that really started the internet in 1983 and had the worst corporate merger in history with Time Warner. And now that has been disaggregated, and I'm on the board of AOL. And I was on the board of Motorola before we sold it to Google about 2 years ago. So just some background. Now we're going to do a game. So get out a piece of paper or your phone or whatever you like to write on. And I researched a book and published it about 20 months ago. And I did a lot of neuroscience research in that book. And neuroscience is just a fancy word for getting at what's inside someone they can't express with words. That's all it is. And obviously there's lots of application for us in business. So we're going to kind of play a silly little neuroscience game. So here are the rules of the game. Coaches, you can even play in the back. I'm going to flash an image. Write what comes to mind immediately. Don't think. It has to be from here. It has to be from your gut. It has to be very seminal. And I'm giving you about 5 seconds, and there's about 8 or 9 of these images, just so you know where we're going. So are you ready? Here goes image number 1. Next. Changing. Whoops. Sorry about that. Okay, you saw that. You saw it. Here's the next one. Changing. Next. Next. Changing. Next. Next. Okay, heads up. Sorry, that technology has a little trouble with the buttons. So what did you learn from that? Anyone? Easy, hard? What did you write? Yes, in the back. Major brands. What else? Advertising conditioning. Advertising has an impact, right? What else? How do you feel? So you wrote down, for example, pride. There you are. You wrote an emotion. Not a player, not a product, not a stadium. You wrote an emotion. Anyone else? Anything else? Yes, in the back. Easily distinguished. Quick, right? Very, very quick. Yes, Warren. They each tell a story, right? There's history, there's DNA, there's something in all of those. That's the point I'm raising. It's all nice to do this exercise, but the reason I'm doing it with you now is the obvious point was made at the back table. Some brands are clearer and more evocative than others, right? There's no doubt that Apple has a clearer image than Dell, right? And the Crusaders image, pride, I'm sure a lot of you had pride or some powerful emotion. Third brands, I had Red Bull Stratos up there. I had Visa Olympics. I had IBM and US Open. They can be almost as evocative as the individual brands if they activate and partner in the right way. And the research that I'm about to share with you in my book is when you tap into something like pride, that is at the end of the day what drives growth in your franchise, your sports franchise, your business, whatever it is. When you tap into a rich area of the brain, it leads to higher preference, higher loyalty, better business. It's proven. And yet, so often we don't work in that area. Our jobs, really, as business people, as marketers, as salespeople, is to tap into those emotions. I don't care what you're selling to whom. I was talking to the guys over here who sell Caterpillar. That's an emotional decision. There has to be a rational side, but people are buying for a lot of complex reasons. So anyway, that's the reason I shared it. So here's some of my observations about you in doing my research for today, and I just want to check with you to be sure I'm on track. You represent a number of amazing brands, some local with great history and heritage, some international, right? But there's a tremendous diversity in this room, very powerful for you and for the Crusaders. You're here to be inspired to activate your partnership further. Dan talked an awful lot about it's nice to be affiliated with a strong franchise like the Crusaders. It's way nicer to do something with it. So we all want to leave here with some commitments on that. And what you're discussing here is difficult. Doing a long-term partnership and activating it demands different leadership behavior. Right? It's not command and control. It's not you do this. It doesn't work that way. It works with finding win-wins and tapping the creativity that works for you and works for your partner. And that's a whole brain kind of leadership. And a lot of us were not trained that way. At least I wasn't. And then I was told not to mention the America's Cup. Sorry. Penny told me not to mention. We went to one of the races in San Francisco. They canceled it for the winds, but it was amazing just to see them warm up. Just unreal with technology. Unreal. So, am I okay? Anything else I should know? Warren, did I hit everything? Good? Okay. Partnership is how I do. This is one thing I've learned over 25 years of P&G and 5 years since working with a lot of the great companies in the world. Partnership is how I do business. I'm going to tell you a few stories. Maybe there's some ideas in here. Maybe there's some inspiration. You don't know this brand likely. It was really it was the first brand I managed at Procter & Gamble when I was a guy at about 30. It was my first brand manager job. And it's a spread. It's a peanut spread, right? But it was about a $250 million business. So it's used a lot in the U.S. with children. school-aged children because it has nutrition, it tastes good, and they eat it. So I was managing that, and our business challenge was that we were having trouble growing. Having trouble because there were regional competitors that were very entrenched. So I tapped into my team and I said, what partnership could we find to break the mold? So we started thinking about our customer or consumer, which is moms. What are they concerned about when they have school-aged children? Well, the answer is right in front of you. They're schools. And there's an organization called the PTA in America, which is the Parent Teachers Association. There's one at every school, and they're trying to bring resources the schools don't have to help their children learn better. So we said, what if every jar we sold, a dime, 10 cents, goes to the local PTA? So if you buy a jar of Jif at a grocery store in Alabama, in Birmingham, Alabama, it will go to the PTA in the neighborhood of where you bought the jar of Jif. And this was before scanners, before the internet, before GPS. So we said, what if we could do that? Well, long story short, the PTA didn't have the resources to do it, so we had to activate. And we ended up doing it, creating a lot of different systems. And what happened is the brand went to an all-time market share high because of that partnership. And we repeated it year after year. Again, win-win, creativity, activation. That was very early in my career. A few years later, I was managing a brand called Crisco, which is, again, more of a local brand in North America. It's a shortening for pies, baking, cookies. Again, a large business. But the business challenge was people weren't baking. The habits had changed. We started, and that's hard when you want to kind of change habits. So what we did is we said, well, women like ideas, right? So if we can stimulate with lots of interesting ideas on baking, maybe we can stimulate the habit. So what we did is the U.S. has 50 states. Every one of them has a big fair in the summer where millions of people come to. So we said, what if we had a contest where we'd pick the best pie in every state, and then there would be a 50-person competition for the best pie in America. So we activated a sponsorship at every state fair, and then we had a national competition in New Orleans. And we partnered with Good Housekeeping, which was the big media brand in the United States, which published a lot of content for women in baking and ideas. Well, what happened is we stimulated behavior, got all kinds of free media, got women baking, and gave them fresh ideas, which helped the business. And we did it again year after year. Partnership, win-win. Pampers and UNICEF. Pampers is about baby development. I'm going to tell a story about that in a few minutes. We developed a partnership with UNICEF where we jointly came together to try to eradicate tetanus. And in that partnership, the Pampers business, which is the largest nappy brand in the world, went to market share highs because of that partnership. And I'll talk about that more. And then Gillette. We bought Gillette in 2005, big men's brand, lots and lots of partnership and sponsorship history. And, big deal with the National Football League in the U.S., very successful. And you get to meet some interesting people when you do partnerships, as we are in this room, right? So do you know which ones are the athletes up there? So anyway, we're the guys from P&G have the ties on. The athletes don't. Always the way, right? So anyway, you with me so far? We're on the roadmap. I want to share a few stories about partnership and why I have the personal conviction that when the people in this room decide to activate, it is really powerful. You can do amazing things for your business. So I want to talk a little bit about what I found when I left P&G. My mission was to help companies grow their business by focusing on a higher ideal and activating that in all they do. That's why I left, and that's the business I set up. And to execute that mission, I needed to teach and write and think and consult with companies to keep my hands in business. So one thing I wanted to do was write a book. So I set out to do that, and it was about a 3-year project. And I want to tell you a few things and what I learned in writing that book and doing the research. Well, I started with a hypothesis. All of us do that when we have a paper or a thought or a strategy. If you're in sports, you start with a hypothesis. Well, the hypothesis in this book was that great brands, great businesses, do way more than make a great product or service. They seek to impact life in some way that's natural for their history, their category, and their organization. And this is true for the Crusaders or for any of you running a business. If you are driven by a higher ideal, different things happen. I'm not talking about being way up here in the stars. It has to be something that is natural for your brand or for your history, for your people. And the one pivotal story I want to tell on this, and I've already talked about this, is Pampers, right? You all know what Pampers is, right? It's a big nappy brand. It is Procter & Gamble's largest business, but it was also the most troubled business in the decade of the 1990s. Diapers, nappies is like the car business or like the Caterpillar business. It's heavy, heavy capital equipment. Very capital intensive. So when you make a mistake in that business, or you get behind, or you miss a few innovations and you get out-patented, it's very penalizing. It takes a long time to recover. So what happened at P&G is lots of competitors from Scandinavia, from Japan, from the United States were beating us badly in the 1990s. We invented the category, and we were losing. And we were contemplating selling the business. And at that time, in 1996, 1997, any guesses how big Pampers was? P&G's biggest brand even back then. Any guesses? 10 billion? No. We'll get to that. 2.7 in 1997. $2.7 billion US dollars in sales around the world, but losing money badly. Our objective, our goal in that brand was to make a dryer nappy, which is important, but it wasn't enough. We sought to stand for a very functional benefit with no emotion. So what happened is there was a renegade team in Western Europe who said, we're not going to take this anymore. We're tired of losing. No one wanted to work in the business. We never got bonuses. So we said, what if we could come to stand for the objective of every parent? And the objective of every parent is to raise a happy, healthy child. That sounded ridiculous when we started talking about that with the engineers and the factories. What if we could win versus our competition on being the best at helping babies develop? Isn't that the uber benefit in the category? Isn't that what every parent wants? So how do you move from a company that was projecting this message that our diapers are drier with lots of demonstrations to one that we want it to be the brand that has the best ideas, service for your baby's development? Well, what happened is we created this as our beacon, as our mission. If we had a locker room, this would have been in the locker room. We exist to care for babies' happy, healthy development. Therefore, we must create a baby-passionate culture. We started hiring different people. They didn't have to be parents, but they had to love babies. We had to produce products that help babies sleep and play. Because in a lot of the world, babies didn't sleep well at night because they didn't wear anything. A lot of the emerging markets, they wore nothing or they wore cheap cloth. And they woke up a lot. And a lot of them slept with their parents, so the whole family woke up. We had to provide support and education to parents. We had to become a service company, even though we sold products. So I want to show you a video right now that was made 10 years ago already. At around the time the U.S. and other allies had invaded Iraq, and the world was full of conflict and uncertainty. And we produced this video. It's lovely. You'll look at it. Think about the culture that made this versus the culture that made the ad I just showed on the screen. So take a look. It was created around Christmas time, and it came out of the UK and was put into markets that celebrate Christmas. So take a look.
Sun
Okay, just reactions. What? What did that say? What did that convey? Any feelings? Anyone? Anyone? What's going through your head? What did you see? Nothing to do with the product. Interesting. Yes and no. Nothing and everything to do with the product. Yes. Content babies, right? Around every part of the world, right? Every culture. Anything else? Any mothers? Anything you see there? Love? Yeah, yes. Good night's sleep for parents, right? What's the promise? Very interesting. It was a promise to the consumer about what they'd experience as well. Kind of in a bit of a subtle way, but it was a promise. We deliver this peace and contentment. Well, the other thing women told us was, they get it. When we're new mothers, we're concerned about all babies. We want peace in the world. We want our babies, our children, to have a peaceful future where they can grow and develop. They also said they know how babies sleep. They show all the twitches and little movements. So this piece of communication at Procter & Gamble, which is a very left-brain company, right? Data, data, data. Prove it, prove it, prove it. This was a very controversial piece of communication. So the guy that ran the UK said, no way am I going to put any money behind this. So we had a debate, and we tested it. And it had the highest test score that we've ever had for a piece of communication on Pampers on intent to purchase. Not just that makes me feel good. I want to buy the brand versus the others. So this was part of the cultural change. And when you have a higher ideal, a higher purpose, you seek out different people to work with. So in the old days on Pampers, who'd we work with? Ad agencies, media agencies, design agencies. So we said, well, if we're about baby development, we should stretch, we should reach higher. Who else in the world is concerned about baby development? So we got into the partnership business, as you are in this room. So we sought out UNICEF. And we said to UNICEF, what can we help you do? And they said, we could eradicate tetanus if we could get vaccines to all mothers and babies who needed it. We said, we're on. So we developed a partnership with them, which is still going on. 10 years later, UNICEF will tell you it's the strongest corporate partnership they've ever had. It's not about the money. It's about the commitment, the access, and the shared vision. So I'll show you one video that kind of brings that partnership to life, and I'll tell you the business results behind it.
Jim, there's a hard world out there. See it in front of you and stare at the sky.
When you buy specially marked Pampers, you can help the world's babies in need, because one pack of Pampers equals one life-saving vaccine.
Dream of far away. Dream of today. Fly away.
Together, we can help give babies a brighter tomorrow.
You know, the activation of this is pretty commercial. Right? You buy this and we'll help. But you know, mothers said, I'm going to buy the category anyway. I love that they're doing this. And so when we started this activation, obviously we had to do most of the heavy lifting, not UNICEF. The market share and brand equity on Pampers jumped higher than we've ever seen on any brand in the company's history in one quarter. Because it was spot on our mission. It was world-changing in a way. It was ambitious. And our consumers loved we were doing it. The point I'm raising, I know I'm going off a bit on a category that's very different from what most of you work in. The principle behind it, I think, has some lessons for you. higher ideal, find partners and sponsors who share that, and activate it in a really creative way. So, now, obviously, Pampers, nappies, still in business. Someone said, when I said how big was it in 1997, 2.8 billion, making no money. Right now, highest margin in the P&G portfolio. BT, sales about 12 billion. In a tough, competitive category globally. So the reason I'm going on about this was my last line management assignment before I was asked by A.G. Lafley, our CEO at the time, to be Global Marketing Officer at P&G, a corporate job. So I carried the lessons of this to P&G, and we really changed how the company thought about brands and marketing and people from this lesson. So it's why I shared it. And so that was my number one hypothesis. It's the one I spent the most time on, the most powerful one. The second one was great brands, great businesses, great sports teams are led by leaders who have high emotional intelligence, who approach things with their whole brain, rational and emotional. Here are 4 CEOs who I admire a lot from lots of different cultures. They approach their business, and I call them artists, because what do artists do? They create things that are not there. They ask different questions. They see the world differently. They use the left and right side of their brains. And frankly, most of us are trained and rewarded to use the left side of our brain, not the right side. And breakthrough happens from both sides. And these people ask different questions, work on different things, expect different things from their organizations. So I ask you around these tables today, which are you, the operator or the artist? And we all lean one direction or another. So if you're more the operator, find a way to complement yourself with an artist. If you're more the artist, find someone to complement yourself as an operator. But breakthrough happens in business and life when all these things are going on at once, when we approach problems with our whole brain. So this is one other hypothesis I wanted to test. Here's a lovely quote from Fortune magazine. When you can sometimes teach a dreamer to be a strong operator, you can rarely teach a business person to dream. And we're here for 2 days to do a bit of dreaming. It's part of why we're here. So my third hypothesis was, after the great brands and businesses seek to make an impact, great leaders bring a whole brain approach, culture is, at the end of the day, the ultimate competitive advantage. Not your technology or your footprint or your go-to-market. It's your culture. I visited these companies in doing research for my book, and they're from all over the world. And they allowed me to come in with a video camera and interview people in finance and sales and operations and marketing. And I had my list of questions, as every researcher does. I couldn't get them to stop talking about their culture. And some of them were going through tough times. They just wanted to talk about their culture and what was special or what had to improve. And certainly one lesson I've learned in my 25 years at P&G, when I've had the best experiences, the culture was rocking. And how much time do we as leaders spend in nurturing and creating and rewarding the culture we want? Not enough. So those are my hypotheses. So I believed it, but I wanted to prove it. I wanted to challenge it. I wanted to publish something that had some science behind it. So I reached out to Millward Brown, big research company, part of the same network that IEG is in. They have the largest and best database of brands in the world. It goes back about 20 years, and they have consumer data and financial data. And I became a paying client of Millward Brown, not as big as I was at P&G, but a smaller client. And I had a team there, and I asked them this question. Let's look over 10 years at the brands of your 50,000 brands in your database, the top ones that grew their consumer bonding or their equity with customers and their financial value creation. And what could we learn from them? So we cut the database over 10 years, drew the line at 50 because that was a big enough group we could draw some conclusions from, but not overwhelming. And here are the 50 brands we studied. We visited about 12 personally. My students at UCLA crawled all over these 50 brands. They did phone interviews, they did desktop analysis. And the big conclusion Remember my hypothesis was the great brands and businesses seek to make an impact higher than the products and services they offer. The big conclusion was that these brands were driven by something else. Call it a mission, call it a purpose. I like the word ideal because it has idea in it and you never reach it. They were driven by a higher ideal and they activated that ideal in all they did, including their sponsorships, which we'll get to in a moment. This was the power finding. Were they perfect? No. But they had a North Star that guided everything they did. Here are a few examples. Well, before I get to the examples, I said, okay, fine. This is what my analysis with Millward Brown and UCLA showed. Let's go to consumers. Do they see these 50 brands as more ideal-based than their competition? And the research came back, yes. So consumers even saw it. And we had to do some interesting research to get at that because no one will tell you that. I said, fine. So if these brands are more ideals-based, does it impact purchase intent? Once again, the data checked out. How do these 50 brands do against the financial markets over the last 10 years? Well, they outperformed by about 400%. So, and how do they approach partnerships? Interesting data. 34 of those 50 spend more than the average brand. 11 spend about average, and 5, we don't have the data or it's below average. So an overwhelming amount believe in partnerships to bring their ideal to life. So what I'm trying to say, and the point I'm making, is stuff is changing. Things are changing in business. And I think the brands and the businesses who are with it and leading the way are the ones that are thriving. And those that are not are being led behind. So I think there is a new story. There's a new framework. There's a new narrative happening in business. A lot of what I was taught 30 years in business school is not so relevant anymore. Some of it is, but some of it's not. And I think the brands that we're talking about here are setting the way. And we have a choice to be one of them or not. So I think there is a new framework. And all I tried to do in my research is codify or study or categorize the behaviors I was seeing from these businesses that are setting the pace. Remember, they're growing 3 to 10 times faster than their competitors. And I tried to study their activities and create a framework to help other people implement what we've learned from these brands. And I put it in the metaphor of a tree. Could have chosen a diamond or a circle or whatever, but I like a tree for all the things that a tree stands for, right? Everlasting in a way, organic, needs to have a healthy ecosystem to thrive. Should I take this off? Is that better? Okay, good. Thanks. So let's just go through a bit of this. Well, the first thing I found is these brands had to figure out what is their purpose, their mission, their ideal. Some of them knew it, some of them didn't. So the first thing you have to do is discover or rediscover your purpose, your ideal. And we've actually found something interesting about it, which I'll talk about in a minute. We've already talked about what an ideal is. It's the impact you're trying to make, the reason you exist. Why did you begin in the first place? What were the origins of your business? What's the role you're playing with your customers and in the world? What motivates people? What attracts people to your brand, your business? We found when we studied these 50 brands, we didn't go in looking for this, it kind of popped out of the data, that they fell into one of these 5 areas of basic human values. So the question for you is, if you're working on a business or brand and your purpose or your mission or your ideal is not in one of these 5, why? It's a good conversation starter. And you can see they're big. I know it's hard to read. Joy, connection, exploration, Pride is a word that came to us when we did the neuroscience exercise on the Crusaders. Impact. And here are some examples of brands that bring that to life. So these 50 brands, they all fell into one of these 5 areas of human values. Here are a few examples. This is a lovely little brand that began in the mountains of Tennessee in the United States about 150 years ago. Started by a guy named Jasper Daniels, who had a nickname called Jack, and he was a bit of a rogue. And this mission of that brand, that business, is the same today as it was 150 years ago. And it guides everything they do. What is their major partnerships? They have a big barbecue contest because it's consistent with their origins, it's consistent with Tennessee, it's consistent with their category, and that helps them to get their message out to many, many more people. So, the largest whiskey in the world, by the way. Growing 15% last year. Not bad for a 150-year-old business. The great French brand, Louis Vuitton, it's been about accentuating luxuriously the journey of life. And they're still about that, and they were about that when they were founded, also about 150 years ago. Everything they do goes through that lens. The largest company in the Southern Hemisphere, Petrobras, the Brazilian part private, part state-owned energy company, only energy company in the world with a female CEO, and is all about sustainable development of Brazil and the markets they touch. And the last one, a great B2B case over the last 15 years, IBM seeking to make the planet smarter in everything they do. This guides their investments, their culture, their decisions, their behavior, and their returns have been outstanding over the last 12 years. So here are some other companies that are on this path, some doing better than others. But as I said, I think there is a new story, new things happening, a new framework in business, and these companies are at least trying to go down that road. So the question for you, whether you're a CEO or an entry-level person in your organization, do you have an inspiring ideal that drives growth? Whether you're selling locally, internationally, selling a highly technical product or a highly consumer product, do you have an ideal that inspires growth? And do your partnerships come from that ideal and reinforce that ideal? How can your partnership with Canterbury and the Crusaders be consistent with your ideal and help drive that further? So what I want you to do now, I want to take a little time, 3, 4, 5 minutes, to do a little bit of a thought exercise. And I'd like you to get in pairs at your table. I'd like you to do this. What is the ideal of your business or your brand? And it may be explicit, it may not be, but what do you think it is? Does it come to life in your partnership? Yes or no? Simple question. Yes, no. And just an idea or two to get that moving. You'll be talking this for the rest of the time together in the next day and a half, but I want to sort of get you warmed up and thinking about this. I know there's a bunch of CEOs in the room. Sometimes you don't like doing these kinds of exercises. You've got a big role in this. If the CEO doesn't believe in the ideal and participate in its activation, it ain't going to happen. Whether you're a tiny business or a big one like P&G, it just won't happen. So got it? Ready? Find a friend. If you're at a table of 3, just do it together. Find a friend. Go out about 3 or 4 minutes of this, and I'll bring you back. It is a mindset shift. And you keep asking the question, why? You know, why are you producing a great rugby team? Why, until you can't answer it anymore. That's what we did on Pampers in the next example. Okay, why are we making dryer diapers? Well, to make babies, I don't know, to keep them comfortable. Well, why is that important? Well, if they're not comfortable, they can't learn. Well, why is that important? Because if they can't learn, they can't develop to be good human beings. We just kept asking why. You know, and we kind of developed that methodology at Procter & Gamble on our 250 brands. And it really transformed several of them. People want to be part of something greater. Sports team, business. And if you can tap into that, codify it, get everyone on the same page, which is the tough part, and stay with it through hard times. IBM's having some hard times now. They're sticking with it. You know, so keep asking why. But it is hard. It is hard. Anyone else? Any other thoughts, feelings, observations? How many in the room feel like they're working on a business with a really good ideal that everyone shares? Over there in the apricot shirt. Can you say more about that? There you go. That's good. Microphone.
From Woohoo New Zealand Tax Refunds.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've, throughout the company, an ideal around surprising and delighting our customers with all our services that we offer. So, and that's throughout their internal culture everywhere.
It's great. So everyone shares it. Everyone feels that you celebrate that. You bring it to life in your culture.
Yeah,
How's your
internally and
business?
externally.
Business is doing well?
Business is going very well.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Anyone else? Any other stories? If you feel like you don't have an ideal and you have no idea what you're doing, I've been there too. But there's usually something in the company, in the organization. The answer is usually in the organization. It's with the people. Almost always is. So anyway, this was just to get you started. We'll continue the dialogue. We're back to the tree. As I said, the tree is nothing more than a guidepost of activities that great businesses do to bring their ideal to life. First is you have to discover and make it explicit, like the surprise and delight that you just shared. Second one is, it better damn well come to life in your culture. And these are the two big ones. And culture is not a soft word. Culture is what we do. It's our practices, our rhythms, our processes, our rewards, our rituals. I'm doing some work with a large beer company, biggest in the world. And they're talking about how they bring to life their ideals better in their rituals. Right? They're looking at their culture very, very deeply. So anyway, we're not going to go through this. Here are the 10 things I learned from studying these companies and looking at my career history, things that you do to build an ideals-based culture. I just want to talk about one of them for a moment and do a few symbolic things to create excitement. Right? When we were in Pampers, UNICEF created excitement. It was symbolic of what we stood for. So think about, in your relationship with the Crusaders in Canterbury, is there something you can do symbolic that makes a statement about your culture and your ideals? And I'm going to share one here that you've all seen. It's worth seeing again. It's about the most symbolic thing I've seen any brand do in the history of the world about their ideal. And here you go.
Release.
If you're scared, walk away, 'cause there's no need to feel ashamed. Yeah, we all feel the same. Where's your passion? Where's your
All right, now, the whole road is looking on. I'm going over. Jumper away. Speed 725. Showing Felix in a stable descent. And Felix is back to real safety, the new world record holder.
So not everyone can afford that, right? But what is Red Bull's ideal? What do they stand for? That's a goal, being the most recognized energy drink. What's their ideal, though? What do they try to help people do? Yes. Dream big, right? Energy, give you wings, help you fly. Literally what they, and if you go to their offices, talk about who they hire, what they look for, what they reward, it's all about that. So this was hugely symbolic against their ideal, and obviously got press all over the world. No one could stop talking about it. One of the most viewed videos ever. So a very, very strong statement about what they stand for. So we're not going to do an exercise on this, but is your partnerships, symbolic statements about your culture? And if not, how can you make them that way? How can you make them that way? It's a way to advance your company forward. Again, think creatively about this. Think deeply. That's what we're going to be doing over the next day and a half. And the third area and last one I really want to talk about is communication, right? And are you communicating your ideal to engage your customers and your employees? And do your partnerships have a role in that? Right? And I'm talking about everything we do to communicate. Signage, emails, office designs, conversations, everything. A lot of what we do, by the way, as leaders is communicate, right? That's what we do. So I'm going to share one brand that, again, they have a lot of money. They're well recognized, but their partnership on the Olympics is one of the best. When I was at P&G, we benchmarked this. And they measure this, measure it, and get a tremendous amount out of forwarding their business and advancing their ideal. And the brand is Visa, and they brought tremendous equity and emotion to a credit card. And the partnership with the Olympics and how they've activated, more importantly, is really driving that. So you've seen this before. Again, we're seeing again. Think about how they communicate their ideal in this.
David Bodiah will make over 25,000 practice dives in a year. That's like diving off the highest building in the world over 180 times. All the more reason to cheer for one perfect dive right now. Visa, supporting athletes and the Olympic Games for 25 years. Join our global cheer.
So they communicate like crazy with employees, with customers all around their partnership with the Olympics and helping people go forward, go out in the world, follow their passions with great freedom. Right? And their results in their Olympic partnership have been just outstanding. So back to the tree, I began by saying I did a lot of studies of great brands and what they do. I tried to capture it in this framework. We talked about 3 parts of it: building an ideal, building the culture, communicating it. The role of your partnerships in that. I'm asking you to question that, elevate it, take it to a different level. So I want to end with a challenge and then a short story, and then we can have some Q&A until lunch. And the challenge, I was sitting with Warren at lunch 2 days ago, just talking about, really at the end of the day, business is pretty simple. We just make it complicated with a lot of crap, stupid work, politics. But at the end of the day, if you can answer these questions emphatically with your team, you will grow. I guarantee it. Does everyone know your ideal and what you stand for? The why behind your business? Does everyone know that and share it? Are your partnerships coherent with that ideal? And if they're not, damn it, make them coherent. Or make a different decision. How will you activate your culture behind the ideal? How will you communicate? And I'm not just talking about advertising, everything we do. How will you deliver the experience of your product or service? Does that bring the ideal to life and reinforce the ideal? And then how will you evaluate progress? We typically only evaluate progress in sales, cash, share. What about bringing the ideal to life with your customers? Is that part of your measurement, part of your reward structure? It all comes down to that. That's what I've learned on that slide. Business is that simple. We just get distracted by a lot of other things. So last story. There are the objectives. I put that on the screen about an hour ago. I hope you have more conviction that an ideals-based approach is the way to grow and your partnerships have a role in that. I hope you've taken something out of here in the notes you've taken that can help you in your business or a lesson as a leader. I hope you've enjoyed yourself a bit, and I hope there's the brewing of a commitment you want to take out of here tomorrow afternoon to share with your team. Good with me? The story I want to end with is another personal story. It's obviously a big brand, big sports brand, and a big business brand up on the screen who came together years ago in a special partnership. When I was new in my role as Procter & Gamble's global marketing officer, I thought about the companies that did a great job on partnerships and sponsorship, and I wanted to go learn from them. So I called IBM at the time, and I said, can I come visit and just understand how you approach this, how it's consistent with Smarter Planet, how you measure it, all that. And the woman at that time, her name was Abby, she was the global chief marketing officer for IBM, said, why don't you come join me at the US Open, and I will show you how we think about partnerships. I'm a big tennis fan, I'll go to the US Open. So I met her there, and she put me together with some of their customers. And basically, she showed me that they use the US Open as a way to demonstrate their technology. It's a demo. And they show their customers the role that technology is playing in how the Open runs and how they help fans, coaches, players. And we went into the guts of the US Open and looked at their servers, their technology, their visualization with customers. So yes, they have hospitality, but the Open is a way for them to demonstrate their technology. And I was blown away by that. We just, as at P&G, we didn't think that deeply about our partnerships. We did a pretty good job at it, but I learned a lot from that visit. So I want to end with a video. It's about 2 minutes long, so relax, have some Powerade, and just share this as the last thing we're going to do, and then we'll come back and do some Q&A until we break for lunch. But listen to how they think about sponsorship, partnership, and how they demonstrate the capability of their company through that. It's a great example of activation.
IBM provides every type of technology that would allow a fan anywhere in the world or on site to really experience the US Open. We have a lot of really exciting things for fans all around the world, whether they're mobile or whether they're in front of their laptops. Slam Tracker, which is the way you can really follow everything happening at the tournament, has been updated with a new look, but also some new features.
We've added social sentiment to Slam Tracker, so when players are on the court, we're actually tracking conversation on Twitter about those players and how much positive sentiment there is about the players during the course of the match.
Keys to the Match really takes the technology we apply to businesses all around the world, predictive analytics, and applies it to tennis. We've taken 8 years of data, well over 40 million data points of matches. And when they play each other here at the US Open, we know what things they need to do based on past history and data in order to succeed.
Slam Tracker and Keys to the Match provide that data insight for fans so that they feel like they're even more knowledgeable on what is taking place in the match. How do we know what the next move should be for a player, and how is that going to enhance that player's actual overall game so that they might be able to win?
We have another new use for analytics. Analytics is helping us to manage the cloud. We're managing the capacity of the cloud and how we have to dynamically scale it up and down during the course of the tournament using analytics. The analytics look at things like player information, player popularity, social sentiment, and determine whether there's going to be more demand or less demand so we can scale the cloud capacity according to that prediction.
Mobile is key for us. We've got global fans who are clamoring for more and more US Open information and content. So we have a mobile-friendly site as well as a mobile app that we work together with IBM to build and create. And that's how our fans are getting player stats, news, photos, videos. All of that is available via our mobile app and our mobile-friendly site. Each year we look at what are we doing and how can we be better, and it's the analytics that ultimately ends up driving where we go and where we place our resources, and IBM helps us do that.
So again, the principle behind it, right? Activation, demonstrating your capability as a company through your sponsorship. I think it's one of the great examples in the world. And by the way, they're at it year after year, making it better and better. It's a long-term commitment on both sides. So anyway, that's all I have. I tried to take you through a little walk through the park about partnerships and how I feel about them in my long history, my career. Try to show you what I've learned about growth in a major study I did over 3 years, and the areas that I think could be most interesting and relevant for what you're dealing with in this room, and that is how to activate your partnerships to a higher level. And it all begins, I think, with your purpose, your mission, your ideal, and the role of the partnership in that. So let me pause there, take a breath.